Hello, my name is Heather Prekop, and this is my mini lecture on different models of leadership. Through the different modules and the different readings, I think the key concept that keeps coming up when looking at leadership is that leadership is all about relationships. And that includes the relationship that we have with ourselves, the relationship that we have with others, and in our profession, the relationship that we have with education. The first relationship that I'm going to speak about is the relationship that you have with yourself. Multiple readings have talked about how we need to be self-aware as leaders. Robert says in his articles that leaders must be self-aware. They must know the impact they are having on people and the system and how that impact has changed over time. You need to be able to understand how your colleagues are feeling about the changes and things that you're trying to do. And you need to be aware of also how you're feeling about the different changes. Goleman also talks about how self-awareness and being our authentic self is a key part of being a leader. And that means being aware of our emotions and being the same person that we are with ourselves, that we are with others, which is sometimes a hard thing to do. Goleman also talks about how we need to have self-control and cognitive control. And this allows us to keep moving forward even when there are setbacks and distractions. And before you can be a good leader, you need to have a strong relationship with yourself. And you need to be aware of how your actions not only impact how you think and what you do, but how they impact others. The next relationship is the relationship that you have with yourself and others, so your colleagues. In multiple readings, the idea of people needing to feel safe has come up. Goleman talks about having emotional empathy and being able to read others and group dynamics. Roberts also talks about how we need to be engaged in being able to understand the situation. So really understanding why people might be behaving in a certain situation and putting yourself in their shoes to understand why their reactions might be the way that they are. He also mentions creating a safe space for conversation. So not only listening to people, but offering advice when needed. In the 4 forms of relationships, it states that psychological safety versus fear created by the team leader was found to be a key factor in how well teams learn and perform. So clearly having a good relationship with the people that you're working with can make or break you as a leader. Goleman also states that research suggests that as people move higher through the ranks, that they lose their ability to maintain personal connections, or that they suffer. So it's important to remember that even though you may be gaining more responsibility as you move up in whatever system you're working in, you cannot lose sight of who you're working with and the relationships that you have with them. I think that was one thing I found with my role this year, is that I'm working with so many different people and so many different teachers, and it really does boil down to the relationship that I have with them. I'm finding that, teachers feel if we have a good relationship, they are much more open to suggestions and trying new things, and we have a much better working relationship, which then allows us to develop and plan things for the classroom in a way that isn't threatening. I think sometimes people, when you come into their room, sometimes they feel like you're there to almost, to judge what they're doing, and that's not really what our role is at all. Is to come in and to help support and to meet the needs of the students. And I'm just finding that the better relationship I have with the teachers, the easier that is. Finally, the last relationship I think that's important in our profession is the relationship that you have with education. To me, this means not losing touch with what you're trying to do, and to always bring it back to the kids. This could be represented with the vision-centered model of leadership that we've talked about in our class. But it also goes back to the relationship with others. So often you hear about, as leaders move through the education system, that the further away they get from the classroom, the more and more they don't remember what it's like to be in there and set up policies and procedures that don't really make sense. And I think it's important for us to remember as educators that if we are going to move into a leadership role, we can't forget what education should be about. I have personally found that out of the 4 schools that I've been at, the 2 schools that I enjoyed the most were with leaders who put education first and remember what it's like to be a teacher and really do make it all about the students and don't become quote unquote businessmen, I guess, in a way. All these different relationships tie back to the 4 models of leadership. Because if you know yourself and you know your colleagues and you know your goal or what your connection to education is, you'll know what type of model you need to exhibit and why. Different situations call for different types of leadership styles, and the more you understand who you're working with, the more you'll know what type of leader you need to be in whatever situation it is. Vision and inquiry leadership are the 2 that I would strive for. Sometimes you need to be the answer and centered leadership, and you need to know when to leave people alone as well. Right now, because I'm in a new position, in a new school, and really developing something new, I tend to be more of the answer and centered and trying to set up the vision centered leadership where people can understand why I'm trying to do what I'm doing. But eventually I'd like to get into the inquiry-centered leadership where it's not just me with the answers, but people feel empowered really to make the decisions that they need for their classroom and strive to meet the needs of their students. Finally, Goldman, I think, sums it up best when he says, if great leadership were a paint by numbers exercise, great leaders would be more common. While all this seems very straightforward, it's actually really quite complex. It's not easy, and it also takes time to build up those relationships with people. I think that's, like I said, the thing I think I've focused on the most this year is trying to get to know different teachers and their styles and build a strong relationship with them. Because what it basically boils down to is respect, and respect has to be earned, and that's not something that just happens right away. So I think as a leader, if you show up with a clear vision and you show that you care about the people you're working with and that you're capable of being a leader in this role, you'll be able to earn their respect and take the program or the business or whatever it is you're leading forward.